High Admiral Zenith stood before the axiomatic Empire's Strategic Council, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's pale light. The massive holographic display behind him showed a spiral galaxy, with one particular arm highlighted in pulsing red. "Another species has achieved nuclear fission," he announced, his translated voice carrying a note of dismissal. "The third this cycle. They call themselves humans." The council members, representing the 12 most advanced races in known space, shifted in their gravity-controlled seats. Most showed signs of boredom. This was routine. Discover primitive species, assess threat level, establish containment protocols if necessary. Supreme Counselor Vex, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate metallic shell, leaned forward. "Your assessment, Admiral." "Primitive but surprisingly aggressive," Zenith responded, manipulating the display to show Earth's cities, military bases, and orbital satellites. "They've managed to split the atom without achieving unified planetary governance. Their weapon systems are crude but numerous. They maintain multiple competing military forces despite sharing a single habitable world." "Fascinating," drawled Counselor Merrick's, her serpentine form coiling tighter. "Another species that will destroy itself before achieving spaceflight. Why waste the Council's time?" Zenith's crystalline structure flickered, the equivalent of a frown. "Because they're advancing faster than any species we've encountered. Their technological progression is exponential. From first flight to orbital satellites in less than 60 planetary rotations. From first fission explosion to fusion weapons in less than a decade." The chamber grew quieter. Those numbers were unusual. "Furthermore," Zenith continued, "they appear to thrive on conflict. Each of their wars has spurred technological advancement. They've turned weapons research into medical breakthroughs, military technology into civilian infrastructure. They adapt and improvise with remarkable speed." "You sound almost concerned, Admiral," Vex observed. "Surely you're not suggesting this pre-spaceflight species poses any threat to the Empire?" "Not yet," Zenith admitted, "but their pattern recognition and technological assimilation capabilities are unprecedented. If they were to acquire even basic Imperial technology." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Counselor Merrick's uncoiled slightly, amusement evident in her posture. "Admiral, you've been studying primitives too long. They're centuries away from developing reliable spaceflight. Their fastest ships couldn't reach their own system's outer planets. They're contained by their own technological limitations." Zenith's crystalline form pulsed with frustration. "I recommend establishing a quarantine zone. No contact, no observation posts within their solar system. Let them develop in isolation, where they can't access our technology." "Denied," Vex announced. "We'll establish standard observation protocols. One base on their moon, minimal staffing. Monitor and report any significant developments." Dismissed. As Zenith left the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Council was making a grave mistake. He'd studied thousands of emerging species, but something about these humans troubled him deeply. 6 months later, his fears proved prophetic. "Emergency transmission from Lunar Observation Post Alpha." The young officer's voice cracked across the command center. "They're under attack." Zenith rushed to the main display. Impossible. The post was hidden by the Empire's most advanced cloaking technology. Its power signatures were masked. Its surface matched the lunar terrain perfectly. The footage showed a primitive chemical rocket approaching the moon. Standard procedure. The humans launched these regularly. But this one was different. It was off course, tumbling erratically, directly toward the observation post. "Evasive action," Zenith ordered. "Power up shields." Too late. The rocket struck the post's outer perimeter. Zenith expected it to crumple against the shields. Instead, it exploded with devastating force, its payload releasing a precise electromagnetic pulse that knocked out the post's systems. "Clever primitives," Zenith whispered. "They detected our power signatures, used our own energy emissions to locate us. That wasn't an accident. It was a test. More rockets were launching from Earth. Dozens, hundreds, each one carrying crude but effective EMP weapons. The humans had noticed the subtle changes in lunar radiation patterns, realized something was there, and launched a massive coordinated attack with weapons specifically designed to bypass Imperial defenses. Full evacuation, Zenith ordered. Destroy all technology that can't be removed. Nothing must fall into their hands. But even as the evacuation began, human ships were landing. Their primitive spacesuits looked absurd compared to Imperial environmental systems, but they worked. And the humans moved with practiced precision, clearly having rehearsed this operation countless times. Within hours, humans had breached the partially disabled facility. Imperial personnel retreated in chaos, shocked by the savage efficiency of the primitive species. The humans didn't try to fight the advanced alien weapons directly. They used their environment, the lunar dust, the low gravity, turning the Empire's technological advantages into vulnerabilities. When Zenith delivered his report to the Council, the chamber was silent. Nobody laughed this time. They recovered 17% of the post technology before we completed the demolition, he concluded. Most of it damaged, but knowing these humans. He paused, his crystalline form dark with concern. They'll learn. They'll adapt. They'll improve upon it. And now they know they're not alone. These primitives dare to attack an Imperial installation. Councillor Merrick's hissed. We should eradicate them now, before they become a real threat. Too late, Zenith replied softly. They've already broadcast their discovery across their planet. Every human nation knows about us now. They're unifying, pooling their resources, sharing their discoveries. And they're doing what humans always do in the face of a superior force. They're innovating. The first human transmissions were already reaching nearby stars. Not the usual mathematical sequences or simple greeting messages common to emerging species. No, the humans were broadcasting military frequencies, weapons tests, shield harmonics. They were telling the galaxy, we see you. We can hurt you. Come in peace, or don't come at all. Zenith watched the Council argue about how to respond, knowing that everything had changed. The humans would never be content now to develop slowly, safely, predictably. They would surge forward with desperate speed, turning every scrap of recovered technology into something new, something unexpected. The Empire had wanted to observe humanity's development. Instead, they had become its catalyst, and Zenith suspected that the galaxy would never be the same. Impossible, General Cax growled, his energy form flickering erratically within his containment suit. Show me the battle footage again. The holographic display replayed the scene that had the entire Imperial Fleet Command in an uproar. A small human vessel, cobbled together from stolen Imperial technology and their own primitive materials, had just destroyed an Imperial heavy cruiser. The human chip's design defied all conventional space combat doctrine. It was asymmetrical, seemingly unstable, with exposed weapon systems that should have been vulnerabilities. They've only had our technology for 8 months, Cax muttered. How did they do this? Admiral Zenith's crystalline form pulsed with grim satisfaction. They turned our assumptions against us. Watch. The footage showed the human ship tumbling through space, appearing damaged and out of control. The Imperial cruiser had approached to capture it, following standard protocol for dealing with primitive vessels. But the tumble was deliberate. It allowed the humans to bring all their weapons to bear in an unpredictable pattern while presenting a minimal target profile. Their ship design isn't flawed, Zenith explained. It's intentionally chaotic. They built it to fight dirty. The Empire had expected humans to follow the normal path of technological development, to copy Imperial designs, to learn through imitation. Instead, they had taken the fragments of recovered technology and merged them with centuries of terrestrial warfare experience. The result was something entirely new. They're calling it the Guerrilla Class, Zenith continued. Named after an ancient Earth combat doctrine. Hit hard, fade away, strike from unexpected angles. They're not trying to match our technology level. They're subverting it. General Cax's containment suit hummed with agitation. One lucky victory against a single cruiser doesn't change anything. Our fleet still vastly outnumbers their primitive ships. Numbers mean nothing if we can't catch them, Zenith countered. Look at their production methodology. New holographic images appeared. Human manufacturing facilities hidden in asteroid belts, mobile shipyards concealed within hollowed-out comets, decoy bases that duplicated Imperial energy signatures to mask the real ones. They weren't building traditional fleets or establishing conventional defense perimeters. Every human installation was mobile, every base designed to be abandoned and booby-trapped at a moment's notice. They're not fighting a war of territories, Zenith explained. They're fighting a war of attrition. Each lost ship teaches them something new. Each battle provides more data. They're learning faster than we can adapt. The display shifted to show captured human communications. Their military leaders spoke of asymmetric warfare and force multipliers. They discussed historical Earth conflicts where technologically inferior forces had defeated superior ones through innovation and unconventional tactics. Their entire history is filled with examples of overcoming superior forces, Zenith said. They're not intimidated by our advantages. They're inspired by them. Every Imperial technology they capture is immediately dissected, modified, and repurposed in ways our engineers never considered. A new alert flashed across the command center screens. Another engagement was underway at the edge of the solar system. This time, 3 human ships against an Imperial patrol fleet. The humans had dubbed their tactics wolf pack warfare, inspired by their planet's predators. The patrol fleet's formation was perfect, their technology vastly superior. But the humans struck from multiple vectors, using Jupiter's radiation belts to mask their approach. Their ships moved in seemingly random patterns that somehow became devastatingly coordinated at the crucial moment. 2 human vessels were destroyed in the battle, but they took 4 Imperial ships with them, and the 3rd human ship escaped with valuable combat data. More importantly, the debris from both sides would be collected by stealthy human salvage teams, providing more technology to analyze and adapt. The humans have a saying, Zenith told the stunned general. Necessity is the mother of invention. By attacking them, we've given them the ultimate necessity. Their entire species is now focused on one goal, surviving us, and they're willing to sacrifice everything to achieve it. The reports from the Empire's frontier worlds grew more alarming each day. Human raid teams have begun striking isolated outposts, not to hold territory, but to gather intelligence and technology. They tested Imperial defenses, probed for weaknesses, and disappeared before reinforcements arrived. Each raid was different, using new tactics, new technologies, new combinations of stolen and improvised weapons. They're not just learning to fight us, Zenith observed. They're learning to think like us, to understand our psychology, our strategic doctrines, our cultural assumptions. And once they understand something, they subvert it, Cax finished, finally grasping the true nature of their enemy. The Empire had expected to find a primitive species struggling to comprehend advanced technology. Instead, they had discovered a race of warriors and innovators who had spent their entire history preparing for this kind of fight, not through technology, but through endless adaptation and the ruthless drive to survive against superior forces. A new alert drew their attention. Long-range sensors had detected unusual energy signatures throughout the solar system. The humans were building something massive, but the readings made no sense. They suggested technologies that should have been centuries beyond their capability. What are they planning? Cax wondered aloud. Zenith's crystalline form darkened. They're planning to do what humans always do when faced with an existential threat. They're planning to change the rules of the game entirely. The Empire had started this conflict believing they were dealing with primitives. They were quickly learning that technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy who turned every defeat into a lesson, every loss into an opportunity, and every assumption into a vulnerability. The learning curve was about to become very steep indeed. The Imperial Science Council chamber was in chaos. Holographic displays showed impossible readings from across human-controlled space, energy signatures that shouldn't exist, weapon configurations that defied conventional physics, and communication patterns that seemed to change faster than the Empire's best AIs could decode them. This cannot be happening. Chief Scientist Bora's plasma form roiled within her containment field. They've only had access to Imperial technology for 14 months. These innovations should take centuries to develop. Admiral Zenith stood silently, watching the displays. The humans hadn't just adapted Imperial technology. They had fundamentally reimagined it. They approached alien science not as something to be revered and carefully studied, but as raw material to be ruthlessly experimented with and reconstructed. "They're calling it the Phoenix Protocol," Zenith finally said, "named after a mythological Earth creature that rises from its own ashes. Every time we destroy their ships, their bases, their technology, they'd rebuild it better, different, unpredictable." The main display showed their latest innovation. Humans had discovered that Imperial shield technology created subtle distortions in local space-time. Instead of trying to match the Empire's superior shielding, they had developed weapons that turned those distortions into vulnerabilities. The stronger an Imperial ship's shields, the more vulnerable it became to these new human weapons. "But that's not the worst of it," Zenith continued. "Show them the Mercury strike footage." The display shifted to a recent battle. An Imperial battle group had cornered a human flotilla near Venus. Victory seemed certain, until the humans activated something new. Their ships began to flicker in and out of normal space, using the planet's intense heat and radiation to mask their signatures. They appeared to be everywhere and nowhere, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before Imperial targeting systems could lock on. "They'd weaponized uncertainty," Zenith explained. "Their ships aren't actually teleporting or phasing. They're creating multiple probability shadows, making it impossible to predict where they'll actually be. They took our most basic quantum theories and turned them into a combat doctrine." The Science Council erupted in protests. It was impossible. Primitives couldn't grasp such concepts, let alone weaponize them. But the evidence was undeniable. Humanity had taken the Empire's fundamental understanding of physics and warped it into something new and terrifying. "There's more," Zenith said quietly. "Show them the psychological warfare data." New images appeared. Imperial crews experiencing mass hallucinations during battle. Command ships receiving conflicting orders that appeared to come from high command. Entire fleets thrown into confusion by human transmissions that somehow triggered primal fear responses in multiple alien species simultaneously. "They've been studying us," Zenith continued. "Not just our technology, but our biology, our psychology, our cultural weaknesses. They've learned how different species perceive reality and found ways to distort those perceptions. They're not just fighting our bodies, they're fighting our minds." A junior scientist spoke up, her crystalline form trembling. "But how? How can they understand us so quickly?" "Because that's what humans do," Zenith replied. "They've spent their entire history trying to understand their own countless cultures, languages, and ways of thinking. They've fought wars not just with weapons, but with ideas, with beliefs, with the manipulation of truth itself. We taught them to look at the stars. They taught themselves to look into minds." The displays showed more innovations. Human ships using modified Imperial drive systems to create artificial gravity wells as weapons. Stealth vessels covered in engineered organisms that absorbed sensor scans. Communication networks that used quantum entanglement in ways Imperial scientists had never considered possible. "They're not advancing along a predictable technological path," Zenith explained. "They're advancing in all directions simultaneously. Every human ship is different. Every tactic is new. They're treating warfare as a form of evolution, where only the most innovative survive." The Science Council watched in horror as another battle unfolded. Human ships seemed to divide like cells, each fragment becoming a fully functional vessel. Imperial targeting computers couldn't determine which were real and which were elaborate holograms until it was too late. The humans had turned reproduction itself into a weapon. "We thought we were dealing with primitives learning to use advanced technology," Zenith said. "Instead, we're dealing with innovators who see our advanced technology as primitive. They're not trying to catch up to us. They're going in directions we never imagined." An alert flashed across all screens. Long-range sensors had detected massive energy surges throughout human space. They were building something new again, something that made no sense to Imperial science. The readings suggested they had found a way to harness the quantum foam itself, the very fabric of space-time. "The Empire has spent 10,000 years perfecting our understanding of the universe," Zenith told the stunned council. "Humans look at that same universe and see only possibilities we're afraid to imagine. We gave them a glimpse of advanced science, and they've turned it into an art form." The displays showed more battles, more innovations, more impossible adaptations. The humans weren't just fighting a war anymore. They were conducting the largest scientific experiment in history, with survival as their hypothesis and the Empire as their unwilling test subject. The learning curve hadn't just become steep, it had become vertical. The Imperial High Command Strategic Chamber was unnaturally quiet, where once thousands of officers had coordinated fleet movements across the galaxy. Now only a handful remained. Most of the holographic displays were dark. Too many command centers had gone silent. Too many fleets had ceased reporting. Supreme Commander Arcos, his energy form barely contained within his ceremonial armor, studied the latest reports with growing dread. "They've broken through the Centauri line," he announced. 3 more systems lost in the past week alone." Admiral Zenith stood before the command staff, his crystalline form dim with exhaustion. "The humans aren't just pushing us back," he explained. "They're changing the nature of space itself as they advance." The main display activated, showing the extent of human expansion. But these weren't normal conquest patterns. The humans hadn't simply occupied Imperial systems, they had transformed them. Entire regions of space now operated under different physical laws, making them impossible for Imperial ships to navigate safely. "They're calling it environmental warfare," Zenith continued. "Instead of adapting to space, they're making space adapt to them. Every system they take becomes a trap for our forces." The footage showed the latest human innovation. Their ships now traveled through artificial corridors of altered space-time, moving at speeds that should have been impossible. They had taken the Empire's understanding of faster-than-light travel and completely reimagined it. Instead of pushing through space, they were pulling space around them. "But that's not the worst part," Zenith said quietly. "Show them the hive mind data." New displays flickered to life, showing patterns that made several officers recoil. The humans had developed a form of networked consciousness, linking their ships and crews into temporary collective intelligences during battle. They could think and react as one, yet maintain individual creativity and initiative. "They've weaponized their individuality," Zenith explained. "Unlike our group mind species, humans can move in and out of collective consciousness at will. They're combining the advantages of unified action with the unpredictability of individual thought." A junior officer spoke up, her crystalline form pulsing with confusion. "But their biology shouldn't allow for such connections. Their brains are too primitive." "They're not using biological neural networks," Zenith replied. "They've developed quantum consciousness interfaces. They're linking minds through the fundamental structure of reality itself. And every time we develop countermeasures, they evolve new methods of connection." The strategic display updated again, showing the latest battle data. Human fleets moved like living organisms, adapting and evolving mid-combat. Their ships could merge and separate at will, sharing energy and resources in ways that made traditional tactical analysis meaningless. "We thought we understood warfare," Zenith continued. We had mastered space combat through 10,000 years of technological advancement. But the humans, he paused, his form flickering with something close to admiration. They don't see combat as a science to be mastered. They see it as an art to be continuously reinvented. Supreme Commander Arcos's containment field crackled with frustration. They're still primitives, barely out of their gravity well. How are they defeating our most advanced fleets? Because we taught them the wrong lesson, Zenith answered. We showed them that they were primitive, that they were inferior, and in doing so, we gave them something they've always needed to achieve their greatest advances, an existential threat to overcome. The displays showed more innovations, human ships that could manipulate probability fields to make impossible shots, weapons that didn't destroy Imperial vessels, but rather transformed them, turning their own technology against them. Communication systems that operated through dreams and collective unconscious patterns that Imperial encryption couldn't block. They're not just winning battles, Zenith explained. They're rewriting the rules of reality itself. Every defeat teaches them something new. Every victory opens new possibilities. They've turned the entire war into a vast laboratory for human innovation. An alert flashed across all screens. The humans had launched a new offensive, but the energy signatures were like nothing ever recorded. They appeared to be using the accumulated knowledge of the entire war to create something entirely new. Imperial doctrine states that warfare is about achieving superiority, Zenith told the stunned command staff. The humans have shown us that true superiority comes from never stopping to think you've achieved it. They don't want to win the war. They want to transcend it. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Empire had spent millennia building the galaxy's most powerful military force, only to discover that power itself was becoming obsolete. The humans weren't fighting to defeat them. They were fighting to evolve beyond them. And as the displays showed more impossible victories, more reality-defying innovations, more fundamental rewrites of the laws of physics, one thing became clear. The Empire wasn't just losing a war. They were witnessing the birth of something entirely new in the galaxy. The age of Imperial dominance was ending. The age of human innovation was just beginning. The Imperial Palace's Grand Hall had never seen such a gathering. Representatives from every species in the Empire stood alongside human delegates, their differences stark yet somehow diminished by the gravity of the moment. The war that had reshaped the galaxy was about to end, not with a final battle, but with a revelation. Admiral Zenith, now bearing the scars of countless battles in his crystalline form, faced the assembled dignitaries. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed the changed face of the galaxy. Regions of space that defied traditional physics, corridors of altered reality, and the new hybrid technologies that had emerged from the conflict. We gathered here today believing we would negotiate peace, Zenith began. But the humans have shown us something far more important. They've shown us our own limitations. The display shifted to show the latest human achievement. They had created something beyond traditional space-time, a new form of existence that merged consciousness, energy, and matter into something entirely new. It wasn't a weapon or a technology. It was an evolution. We thought we were fighting a war of conquest, Zenith continued. The humans were fighting a war of transformation. Every battle, every innovation, every adaptation was leading to this moment. Dr. Sarah Chen, the human delegation's lead scientist, stepped forward. Unlike the Imperial representatives in their elaborate containment suits and ceremonial armor, she wore simple civilian clothes. We call it the synthesis, she explained, a way of existing that transcends traditional physical limitations. The display showed how human ships no longer simply traveled through space. They became part of it. Their crews didn't just pilot vessels. They merged with them, their consciousness expanding to encompass both physical and quantum realms. They had turned warfare into an art form, and then turned that art form into a new stage of evolution. But this isn't just for humans, Sarah continued. What we've created can be shared. The barriers between species, between mind and matter, between thought and reality. They're all constructs of our limited understanding. The Imperial Council members shifted uncomfortably. Supreme Counselor Vex's energy form pulsed with uncertainty. You're suggesting we abandon 10,000 years of civilization, our technologies, our ways of existence. No, Sarah smiled. We're suggesting you expand them. Everything you built, everything you achieved, it was necessary. You gave us the foundation. We simply showed you what else was possible when you stopped believing in limitations. Zenith's crystalline form brightened. Show them, he said softly. The human delegates raised their hands. The air shimmered, and suddenly the barriers between species began to fade. Energy beings could exist without containment fields. Crystalline forms could flow like liquid. Organic minds could expand into quantum spaces. This is what we were trying to tell you from the beginning, Sarah explained. Humans don't just adapt to overcome superior forces. We adapt to become something new entirely. And now we can show you how to do the same. The display showed the changes already spreading through human space. Cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Beings that could shift between physical and energy forms at will. Communications that transcended traditional space-time. They had taken the Empire's greatest technologies and transformed them into stepping stones to something greater. We didn't want to conquer you, Sarah continued. We wanted to free you from the limitations of form, of thought, of what you believed was possible. The war was never about victory. It was about evolution. The Imperial representatives watched in awe as human delegates demonstrated their new abilities. They could speak directly to energy beings without translation devices. They could synchronize with crystalline minds. They could exist in multiple states simultaneously. This is the choice before us, Zenith announced to the assembly. We can cling to what we were, or we can embrace what we might become. The humans haven't defeated us. They've offered us transcendence. The Grand Hall erupted in discussion, but it wasn't the usual political debate. Species that had never been able to truly communicate were suddenly understanding each other on fundamental levels. Ancient enemies found their differences meaningless in the face of such possibilities. The galaxy is changing, Sarah concluded, not through conquest or technological superiority, but through the simple human truth that limitations exist only in our minds. We didn't fight this war to win. We fought it to evolve. And now we're inviting you to evolve with us. As the assembly dissolved into excited exploration of these new possibilities, Zenith approached Sarah privately. You knew this would happen from the beginning, didn't you? Even when we first discovered Earth. Sarah smiled. Not exactly. But we knew that any species that tried to limit us would end up showing us exactly how to transcend those limits. It's what humans do. We take obstacles and turn them into opportunities. You didn't just give us a reason to evolve. You showed us how to help everyone else evolve too. The galaxy would never be the same. The Empire had sought to contain a primitive species, only to discover that the very concept of primitive was itself a limitation. The humans hadn't just changed the rules of warfare. They had changed the nature of existence itself. And as the celebrations began, as species that once thought themselves superior or inferior discovered, they were all capable of so much more. One truth became clear. The greatest victory wasn't in defeating an enemy, but in transforming them into partners in evolution. The age of limitation was over. The age of infinite possibility had begun.